It is the 24th of August, 79 years after the birth of Christ. The town of Pompeii at the foot of Mount Vesuvius is brimming with life under the bright sun. 17 years prior, it had been struck by a devastating earthquake. Many of its people killed, its buildings and homes destroyed. And over the course of these 17 years, even though through a lot of pain and effort, the people of Pompeii have slowly started to regain their hope of victory against nature. The future seems bright again. Wherever there was death, the sorrow has now passed. Wherever there were ruins, there are now unending building projects. Infrastructure and trade are slowly returning to what they were before. All kinds of architectural masters and artisans have come to the city to contribute in the making of a new chapter. And life is starting to flow back into the streets of the city like a new stream of blood through the crushed veins of an old soul. It is now the 24th of August, 10 o'clock in the morning, when the dream turns to horror in the span of a second. A horrifying explosion rocks the entire city. The top of the mountain that looms over the valley has now cracked open. It suddenly spews out a black pillar of smoke, thousands of kilometers high. Huge boulders of molten rock fly up in the air, and then start to fall back. As they dissolve in the atmosphere on the way down, they turn into a deadly rain of stones and ash. Accompanying the rain are clouds of hot gas and sulfur, starting to fill every corner of the sky and air. The morning sees the day turn suddenly into night. And the darkness that comes is not the dark of a moonless night, but instead the sound-stifling embrace of a thick shadow that fills a shut-off room when the lights within go out. Some people start to flee immediately following the explosion, but others hesitate. They have seen the wrath of nature before. They've felt the earth shake and seen the city crumble. And they've survived. Why run this time then? Why abandon all and everything they have? Aged loved ones, beloved artworks, precious possessions, their very homes and everything they've ever known, and just for a darkness that would likely pass, just as it did before. And so they choose to stay, not realizing that they would stay forever, frozen in history. Near the Nocera Gate, 3 families of 13 people try to hide from the rain of rocks under a roof. They then realize that although the roof will protect them from the hail, it won't be of help against the oncoming flood of hot ash. They start to run for their lives as their bodies sink in the swirling cinders. The first to fall is the slave, carrying their bag of provisions. Behind them succumb 2 little boys, holding each other's hands and tiles above their heads to avoid the hail of rocks. Behind them fall to death a man, a woman, and a little girl, the woman pressing a cloth to her mouth in an attempt to avoid the poisons in the air. And behind them all falls the eldest man of the family, frozen in his last desperate posture, trying to stand up from the ground. On the street near the Forum lie 7 bodies. A woman wearing all her precious jewels, one of which, the most precious of all, a child in her womb. In the attempt to collect her riches before the flight, she sacrifices herself, her unborn child, and 3 more souls that follow her. A second woman, a 14-year-old girl, and a slave. The gladiatorial barracks prove a fatal death trap. Inside, 2 occupants tied in chains have no idea those chains will tie them to history. Others seek refuge in the rooms, and in these rooms 63 souls perish. In the courtyard of the barracks, A surgeon with his instruments sinks in the sea of burning ashes, and an athlete carrying his bathing accessories. And the priest of Isis falls dead in an attempt to save his sacred vases. In the house of Pacuus Proculus, 9 children try to hide in a salon. They are buried there by their own refuge when the house collapses. In the house of the Faun, the matron cannot abandon her riches. She gathers them all, money, bracelets, rings and necklaces, and starts to run. But she cannot overcome the fear of the falling ashes and runs back to the tablinum, where then the roof collapses on top of her. The rest of her household suffocate all around the house, where they try to find salvation in closets and cupboards. In the western districts of the city, the people think to flee to Herculaneum, not even knowing that from this same direction the most lethal plumes of ash will appear. And Herculaneum, their destination for salvation, is at the same time a victim of Vesuvius's pyroclastic flow, an unstoppable wave of lava mixed with ashes and gas that pummels through buildings and levels them down to the ground. Back in Pompeii, in the Villa of the Mysteries, 11 souls meet history. 3 women on the first story get buried by the ruins of the second, as the house crumbles beneath the weight of rock and ash. And the 6 workers who were fixing up repairs on the house suffocate in the cellar, where they try to hide. A girl falls down and slips away from life near the entrance of the house, and the doorman snuggles in a tiny closed-off closet, where he too spends his last breaths. In the house of the Cryptoporticus, the residents foresee that they will suffocate if they stay inside, so they climb up and out through an opening in the roof, and run through the garden, where the sea of boiling ash engulfs them. A little girl among them, in her last moments, snuggling her face in her mother's lap forever. In the house of Menander, as the sea of ash now rises to almost 3 meters, 4 old men succumb to death in the tablinum. 9 slaves die together as one of them tries to lead ahead, carrying a lamp. 2 women stay inside and are buried by the crumbling house. And the slave guard, who flees to his room and buries himself in a pile of pillows, dies while clutching his coin purse. And it is not only people that suffer in the city. With them, beloved pets and livestock join in eternal history. In the atrium of the house of Esonius Primus, a puppy is tied to a chain and left alone to its fate. As the sea of boiling ashes starts to flood the entrance, it tries to stay up higher and higher above the rising surface, but the ashes reach up more than 2 meters, and the chain is too short. It keeps the puppy down and low as the sea of black filth engulfs the animal. It freezes into history in its last posture, desperately trying to wiggle out of the leash.